Now this is the next gen Q5 and SQ5. Both of them get a new platform, rethought engines, a reworked 48-volt mild hybrid system, and of course, a reworked cabin and much sharper looks. Along with the sharper looks come two significantly reworked engines and a new two-motor mild hybrid system. A full 80% of each engine is new. The rethink brings more power and better fuel economy. As before, the Q5 features a 2-litre turbo 4. It now makes 268 horsepower and 295 pound-feet of torque. The up-level SQ5 gets a 3-litre turbo V6 that now pumps out 362 horsepower and 406 pound-feet of torque. Now both engines work with a 7-speed twin-clutch transmission and quattro all-wheel drive. In both cases the transmission is quick to shift and the quattro system lays the power down in a completely seamless fashion. The new part is the twin-electric motor 48-volt mild hybrid system. The first electric motor is mounted to the back end of the transmission. It improves efficiency as well as the initial response by adding 24 electric horses and 170 pound-feet of torque from Rev 1. The second electric motor is belt-driven and is used for the idle-stop function. This makes it faster and more seamless in operation. The two-motor hybrid works with a 1.7 kilowatt-hour lithium-ion battery. It not only supplies the power to the hybrid side, it also runs the electric air conditioning compressor. While the horsepower gains are modest, that early torque does make an appreciable difference to how both engines feel and drive. That early electric torque and sharper low-end response shows up in the acceleration times. The SQ5 drops the run to the metric ton to a speedy 4.8 seconds while returning better fuel economy. It also sounds the part when it's forced to work at its peak. The Q5 and SQ5 ride on a new platform that gave the adaptive air suspension and electromechanical steering a solid base of operations. On the drive route, the Q5 felt planted and delivered enough performance to keep this driver entertained. While the performance is best described as perky or adequate, the handling is properly dialed in. Add the S-Line option and it gets a sportier suspension. Now tick that box because the crossover really does dance a pretty two-step when it's pushed. For the inner driver, however, there really is only one choice, and that's the SQ5. Pick dynamic mode and the performance becomes the equal of the handling. The ride firms, the response to input becomes sharper, and the SQ5's engine begins to produce a delightful burble whenever the transmission drops a cog or two when pushed into a corner. The harder you drive, the more the SQ seems to come back for more. Wonderful. The big news for both the SQ5 and the Q5 are 3 new OLED screens. One for the instrumentation that is of course reconfigurable. You've got one for the MMI, 14.5 inches this time around, and there's also a 10.9-inch screen for the passenger. The infotainment system now works with the Android Automotive operating system. It's a cracking setup that's faster and more intuitive than the previous unit. Beyond the speed, it's the clarity of everything that really does impress. The infotainment system also works with Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, and a super bang & olufsen sound system. The lone complaint is the cluster of controls that sits beside the driver's side door pull. It requires just too much concentration and dexterity. Yes, time is a great healer, but the controls are packed tightly together and fiddly at the best of times. Try it when you're driving. As for the rest of it, there's plenty of cargo space, although the Sportback does get less because of that delightfully swoopy roofline. A move for the better is a proper place to stow the privacy cover. It sits beneath the load floor when it's not needed. Now it's not left in the garage collecting dust. Finally, all models can tow up to 2,400 kilograms. From the platform to all new looks, everything they've done to both the SQ5 and the Q5 really do move it to a higher plane. I loved the cabin. Those 3 new screens are pixel perfect. As for the rest of it, more power and better fuel economy, win-win. I'm Graham Fletcher for Driving.ca.